Okay, everybody, welcome to the Dennis Prager Show. And I have as my guest Charles Love. He's Executive Director of Seeking Educational Excellence, host of the Charles Love Show, has a brand new book, Race Crazy, BLM 1619 and the Progressive Racism Movement. Charles Love, good to see you.
Good to be on. Thank you. The only radio show I would probably dress up for.
Well, not only that, you are the only guest I've ever had who's better dressed than me.
Well, yeah, thank you.
I wear a shirt and tie to the show. I did before there was ever video. And you're wearing that and a jacket. I actually appreciate it. I think that dressing up to appear on TV, for example, is appropriate. You're going to the public. You honor the world with how you dress. Anyway, don't start me on that because I
know.
It's not your subject. Where are you located, by the way?
I am in New York City right now.
Right now or in general?
Well, in general, I moved here 6 weeks before COVID started. Remember me on the back of the bus? And you're like, why'd you move there from Chicago?
Well, it's an equal trade. They're both cities run terribly. So it's a very funny move. That you would move to New York, though, a week before COVID shows that God has a sense of humor. It's a strange move. All right, my friend, you've written a courageous book here. Whenever I have a conservative black on the show, I ask a few personal questions, if I may. First, how many people in your family, parents, siblings, children, spouse, agree with you?
Until you said spouse, I could have said zero. But very, very few. Maybe one.
Well, thank God if there is one, it's your spouse. That's the most important. It is better to have your entire family differ with you and your spouse agree with you than your spouse disagree with you and everybody in your family agree with you. Because the marital relationship is key. So I'm happy for you about the spouse. So what does your family think? You've gone crazy. What do they think?
No, that's the reason why I try to write and speak from a different perspective than even most black conservatives. I get asked often, do people attack you? I'm like, rarely. And it's because I talk about the culture and I don't talk about politics. So my mom is the best example. She laughs when I talk about her. She's 85 years old. So it's baked in. She's going to be a Democrat. She says those Republicans. But when I ask her about issues, she sounds like a conservative, right? If I ask her about immigration, taxes, gay marriage, all that stuff, she sounds like a conservative, which is why I talk about the issues rather than what do you think about the conservative or the politician of the day. So most of them don't give me a hard time because I just say, okay, you say racism is an issue. We disagree about how much it is, but is it a solution?
But Charles, you attack BLM straight on. Doesn't your family support Black Lives Matter?
Not only does my family not support Black Lives Matter, but until George Floyd, very few blacks did. I talk about that. Have we all seen it? We as conservatives, they make fun of the white liberal with the Black Lives Matter signs in the window. And the hate has no home here, even though they're full of hate. But what they forget is that you never saw that stuff in the black community. In fact, I never saw a black person with a T-shirt or even say it until after George Floyd died. So before that, most of my friends thought it was some weird fringe group. They thought it was fronted by blacks, but it was really some hard left white organization because they're not really the left. Right? They have these few things that they agree with the left on, but most of them aren't that far left. So no, they don't have a problem with me attacking BLM. They don't like BLM.
That's very interesting. So how do you explain Major League Baseball and the NFL and the NBA with putting Black Lives Matter on the court or on the field?
Oh God, that's terrible. It's they're a separate class I look at, right? Because they're the extremely wealthy. They're looking at numbers. All they care about is I said before, they just want an attaboy. I don't think that they overnight believed that they were racist. That's what I have a problem with these corporations, these business people. They were doing what they were doing for years. And then all of a sudden, overnight, they just said, oh, I just have to beat myself. Oh, self-flagellation. Everything is so bad. I'm a horrible person. But they didn't think that last week because let's be honest, they don't think it now. What they're saying is the cultural mob is coming for everyone. I'm an old middle-aged white man, so I'm the main culprit. So if I say what they want and throw them a little something, they'll leave me alone. You really think somebody who, especially someone who didn't grow up rich, who got rich, became a CEO of a major Fortune 500 corporation, doesn't like capitalism? So all of a sudden they think the government should run everything? Of course they don't. They're doing it because it's the massive extreme level of virtue signaling. So they say things like, well, next week we're going to do this thing, have this training, add this thing to the corporation to focus on blacks. But they don't change anything. All Netflix did was put the BLM logo in the corner and say, we have to put some black movies and put a collection in there. But you think they mentored anyone? You think they donated to any organizations that are actually doing anything? No, which is why in my book, I have 2 points. I think you're wrong, and I explain why clearly. But then I also say, let's give you your argument. Let's assume you're right. What are they doing that's helping the solution and moving us forward? And no one can say anything that BLM, the 1619, the anti-racists are doing that actually helps.
You think that most inner city blacks want a reduction in the number of police?
No. If you would have asked me, my answer is closer to zero to that than your first question. You know how many people in my circle who thinks that we should defund the police or abolish the police as the BLM really wants? Zero. I have yet to meet one. Now, of course, I'm talking to people 35 to 60, so I'm not talking to really young people, but nobody. No matter how liberal my friends are.
Charles, okay, so I got a question, and that is, if that is the case, why do they keep voting Democrat?
That's a good question. I get that question a lot. That's because they have a way, right or wrong, and you understand it because you've been doing it so long. And this is where I beat up the Republicans. It's because they have been believing a narrative so long that it's metastasized. So what I say is they can separate what they believe and what they want from politics. My mom's a good example. And I blame the Republicans because I think they were losing the fight, and so they just picked up the ball and left. So when I was first starting to vote, I was always a clear thinker. My mom would say this. So I was instantly like, why would I just vote for someone because you tell me to vote for them? I need this 2 parties. I'm an American just like a white American. If they get a choice, I get a choice. I want to hear what both sides have to say. And then I turned, and there was no one there for 20 years. A Republican never came and asked for my vote. So guess what? Me, who's never been a liberal, never voted for them for like 15 years because they didn't ask for my vote. So what happens is, what I tell Republicans is it's a bigger problem than that. It's because if you don't say anything, then Nancy Pelosi and AOC or whoever their equivalents were 20 years ago get to speak on your behalf. So they tell the black community what you believe. You're not there to say it's not true. So then we all just believe you're racist. So we say, I don't want high taxes, especially the middle class black. I don't like crime. I don't like this Yahoo who's running on the Democrat side. What's my choice? Vote for a racist? That's why.
Yes, very effective answer. I will tell you a small story, and that is, I remember presidential campaign after presidential campaign, the NAACP would invite the Republican candidate for president to talk before the NAACP. Almost everyone refused to. They said it wasn't worth their time because the NAACP will just be Democrat and liberal anyway. And I thought I would pay serious money from the Prager family bank account to speak to the NAACP. It was a total puzzle to me that Republicans did not do that.
Oh, it was terrible because you may not convince the NAACP, the people who run it, but you don't know who comes to listen to them speak. You don't need to change every mind every time. You need to change 5 minds and keep going. But now, because it got worse, here's the problem. They can do it now, and sometimes they'll invite them, and sometimes they go, and they're like, I'm going to be the Republican that makes a difference. I'm going to go. But it's different because when you go, you only go during an election year. So now the average black person is like, yeah, he went, but he only went because he wanted my vote. So it doesn't seem sincere, even if you are. So the key is for the Republicans to just, they would know what they do. Cost investment, go to the neighborhoods where it's not that expensive, get a 1,500 square foot place, rent it, and just be there all the time. That's what you do. And talk every time something happens.
Do you have any idea, and I'm not expecting that you do, but do you have any idea how blacks in general, and it may not even be fair to say blacks in general, although if you asked me Jews in general, I'm a Jew, and I know the Jewish community, I could answer that. So I'm inviting an answer. We'll take a break, but I'm inviting an answer to the question, how did they react to Donald Trump saying, what do you have to lose? I have a man I'm delighted to welcome to the show, Charles Love, and his book has just come out, Race Crazy, BLM 1619 and the Progressive Racism Movement. So I'm going to get back to your comment about Republicans not making an effort to get the black vote, and your comment about taking an apartment or house in a black community, I think is brilliant. I'm going to get back to that, but I wanted to know, to the extent that you could speak about blacks in general, how did they react? And you may not know, and I would be fine, but how do you think they reacted to Donald Trump's statement? He did make overtures to the black community, and I thought his argument was unassailable. The Democrats are ruining your lives. What do you have to lose voting for me or the Republican Party? How did they react?
Well, I mean, yes, he did make overtures and he got votes. I mean, even after the 4 years was better, it's the 4 years of attacks of being racist, he still got more votes in every minority community, which is fascinating, which proves that people don't really listen to that stuff. And if people have been doing this for years, it would have worked. I think people liked it, but it was kind of different reactions. You had some that said, well, he's right, and maybe I'll consider it. Some that said, kind of like, I'm not saying he's not right, but, he hasn't been a politician enough, long enough, and I don't have a record to see. So I don't know if he means it or if he's just saying it. But then you got, people are prideful. So you get some that will spend all their time talking about how racist the country is and how black neighborhoods are struggling. Look at our neighborhoods, they're struggling. You need to help us. But then the moment someone outside that community says, well, there are problems, they're like, who are you to say that? So some were a little bit bothered by it. And so they took it as you're saying our communities are bad. We have pride in our communities. How dare you put our communities down? So it was kind of a mix. But I think as a whole, people could not, as you say, deny that those situations are there. And it's just a matter of whether they wanted to admit that he's right about how it ended up that way.
That was a terrifically honest answer. I really appreciated it. On this issue, it's so incredible the charges of all whites are racist, or that that words trigger trauma in a black, like if you say you're colorblind, every university now states colorblind is racist. As truly Orwellian an idea as I've ever heard. The whole point of the human endeavor is to judge people by their personality, character, values, behavior, not their color. So, again, does this rhetoric is it really believed by many blacks? All whites are racist? To be colorblind is to be racist, etc.?
I don't know one. Here's the problem. And I will add the cherry to the top of what you're saying. It's bad enough and it's condescending. But what's worse is who's pushing it, right? It's not like you outside of the extremes who are making money, and all the kindies and such. But it's not like there's a bunch of black people pushing into schools to say this stuff. These are all white liberals who are projecting, who's saying, because I'm empathetic, I'm going to speak for the black person because they don't have the microphone or they're not smart enough or they don't have the wonderful whiteness that I have. So because I have this privilege and I need to do the proper things with it, like Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So I, on behalf of the weak, fledgling black person, am going to speak for them. So that's what makes it even worse. But the reason it works and it resonates is, one, I don't think it does. It's so loud that we all hear it and we fight against it. But the average person in general is not listening to it. The average black person is not. But the other factor is, I got to tell you, I told somebody else, I talked to one of my friends, and they kind of laughed because they could see it. So a lot of blacks sit here in this situation where they're like, No, I don't think all whites are racist. That's absolutely silly. And the fact that people are pushing it is shocking to me. But that is getting traction is an interesting social experiment. And since we have dealt with racism in the past and we've had things we had to deal with that others didn't have, Schadenfreude. It's kind of funny to watch you all struggle your way through this and say, hey, let's figure out how we deal with this. And oh no, we're all being called racist. But they don't believe it. They just think it's funny that somebody's actually taking this madness seriously. And beyond that, there are white people saying that. So I'm just a logical guy. So if all whites are racist, why do you get to speak, white person? You are a white racist. So why are you even speaking?
I wondered that the whole time. And why aren't they just projecting what they are onto all whites? I'm not racist. Right. I hereby declare that. It is a total lie to include me in that calumny. I want to talk to you about George Floyd. There was not a single attempt in the trial of Derek Chauvin to show in any way that race was a factor in George Floyd's death. How many blacks or whites know that?
I don't think it matters to them. So very few, but they just had already assumed it was the case. If a black man is killed by a white person, it is racist, right? So it was done because of race. So you don't have to prove it. And the problem of us normal, logical people, we get the burden of proof. So you have to prove a negative. So if he did do it because of race and he put out a manifesto about how I'm going to go kill all the blacks because I hate blacks, you can prove that he did. But you can't prove what was in his mind. But we just go out and we just assume, well, we'll say, well, Dennis Prager and Charles Love needs to prove that he wasn't a racist or he is. And that's where we are now. So we have to prove something that is impossible to prove.
I mean, the whole riots over Floyd were riots over a non-race based event. That's the
not just Floyd, all of Mike Brown, all of them.
That's correct. That is correct. All right, I'll be back with Charles Love. His book is up at DennisPrager.com. Race Crazy, BLM 1619 and the Progressive Racism Movement. Very important work. And he has his own podcast, too, which we'll find out about in a moment.
The Dennis Prager Show.
Hey, everybody, I'm Dennis Prager. Charles Love. He's a really impressive man. Executive Director of Seeking Educational Excellence, host of The Charles Love Show, and his new book, just out, Race Crazy, BLM 1619 and the Progressive Racism Movement, which is exactly what it is. It's a racism movement. I love you for saying that. So here's another question that I think a lot of people would like an answer to. If it's even, again, it might not be answerable. Certainly there's no way to prove an answer. But they are now arguing, the white left at any rate, is arguing that demanding correct answers on exams is racist because the results are not, quote unquote, equitable. And that even applies in Oregon to math. If a vote were taken only among black Americans, do you believe math answers should be changed so that all groups get higher grades? What would the vote be?
Nobody would go for that. No one would go for it. I'm glad you went to education. This is my wheelhouse. And perfect point. Just today, I tweeted out an email I got from the school announcing this wonderful culturally relevant education that they're going to move to. And it talks just about that. And it specifically says English, which is bad enough, and math, right? Culturally, teaching things culturally relevant. And I say this a lot when I talk to people because they don't get it. You're right, the number's 0. But that's why I scream with my megaphone, because no one knows this is happening. You have the CRT debate, and people just say, well, we just want to teach proper history. And I said, I don't care what label, just from my own personal way of explaining the situation, don't care what you call it. I'm not going to get into a debate about a title. What I will say is there are problematic things happening in school. I can show you proof that it's there, and it's dangerous. So to whites, do you want your 12-year-old coming home saying, well, I'm an oppressor? Do you want them being told that they can change their gender, but don't tell your mommy and daddy, because that's happening. And to blacks who, like I said earlier, say, well, that's their problem, we don't have to deal with it. Do you want them saying blacks can't learn math unless we teach it in the black way, right? Because I think we've all been learning math for years, and there is no black way. But they think they're helping. If black parents knew that, they would be livid. But my approach is to the regular folks who are working their 9 to 5, raising their kids and cooking dinner, who aren't watching right or left wing TV and listening to talk radio, and they don't know. So they just let everybody else fight and say it's not my problem. If they knew this was happening, they would join those parents tomorrow.
Fascinating. I don't even understand cultural math.
2 plus 2 is 5, maybe. Well, you hear what they say about English, though? What they say, now that one I still don't agree with it, but at least they can try to tap dance to that. Math, you just look like a fool. But what they'll say is, we keep teaching these old black men. You reported before how like Northwestern, University of Chicago, you want to get a PhD in English, you don't have to teach Shakespeare, or you can get a bachelor's degree at this school and you don't have to learn it. And they'll say, well, too many old dead white men. Why can't you teach black literature, and black authors? Now, to that, you can say, well, technically, black authors might be really good, so there's no problem with that. But it's like trying to erase religion. Even secular writers, especially if you talk about the classics, base their writings on religion, on the Bible. So why would you not want to teach the source document? So I can teach Toni Morrison, but I can't teach Shakespeare and Homer. But what do you think? Who do you think she read? Who do you think Langston Hughes read? So black intellectuals have the opportunity, especially those today on the left. They read the classics, but now they don't think us blacks today are smart enough to read the classics. But then, the white elites still get to read it. So you are perpetuating the gaps you claim you don't like.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Let me give you a personal anecdote on this. I'm very involved in classical music. I conduct orchestras periodically, and it's been a love of mine since high school. So I have never had any problem in acknowledging, even post-Holocaust, that overwhelmingly the greatest composers were Germans. So what? Am I supposed to object? And by the way, the New York Times did object. They listed the 10 greatest composers, and they dropped some of the greatest because they said they didn't want too many Austrians and Germans on the list. So they didn't give you a list of the 10 greatest composers. They gave you a diversity list so that it wasn't overwhelmingly Germanic. But the whole point of your point on Shakespeare is we don't read Shakespeare because he's white. We don't listen to Beethoven because he's white. We read Shakespeare and listen to Beethoven because they're great. And if every great one was an Albanian, I don't give a damn. Greatness.
No, that's true. That's the way it should be. I use an example because I think you have to tell stories like you and paint a picture. So I say, I like food. So you go to a restaurant, you get this dish that's phenomenal. The guy cooks it, he gives you the recipe. It's your go-to dish. You cook it for all your special occasions.
Exactly. Hold on there, Charles. I got to take a break, and this is great stuff. Back with Charles Love in a moment. Hi, everybody. Speaking with Charles Love, has his own show. Executive Director, Seeking Educational Excellence, and his new book, Race Crazy. So I was telling you this horrible idea that we need more, and then fill in the ethnicity or race writers. We need the best writers. If they're all English or white or whatever, it's irrelevant. Greatness. I have no doubt this is part of your, well, look, the whole title of your group is Seeking Educational Excellence. Aren't we hurting kids, whether they're minority or non-minority, by depriving them of the greatest writers because of their color?
Without a doubt. I mean, and not just writers, everything that they're doing that claims to be for the benefit of what they call the BIPOCs, right? Because they can't do X, Y, and Z, so we need to help them. Everything hurts them because we all know, we hear it all the time, regardless of your politics, that in Chicago and Baltimore and Milwaukee, kids are struggling. They're either passing them, dropping out, or they're passing them through, giving them diplomas, but they can't read it because they're reading 3 grade levels back. Is that going to help them? So what they're saying on the one is diversify the boardrooms. We need more black and brown engineers, but we're not giving them the tools and the skills and preparing them to do those jobs. So all you're doing is recycling the people who already have degrees, who already do that work, pulling them from one company, moving them to the other, but you're not increasing the number because you're not going to have a higher percentage of blacks who can do the job because you're not giving them the skills. So if you want to help them, that's what you need to do. Instead, well, blacks are late, so it's racist to make them show up on time. So let's just not count tardiness toward their grade, right? Blacks do poorer in general on the SAT test. Let's just ban the test because those whites can get SAT prep because they're rich. Well, why don't you use all that BLM money to fund college prep? No, we can't do that. Let's just get rid of the SAT. So every step of the way, they're hurting us instead of helping us.
Where has all the hundreds of millions of dollars to BLM gone?
Who knows? Homes, Democrat candidates, more, kindy training, pushing the 1619 project, all kinds of mad, everything but where it should go.
This is unanswerable, but I so enjoy you, I'll ask you. What makes an Ibram X. Kendi tick?
Ooh, see, that's the thing. People say a lot of these people, they call them grifters and say they're just doing it for money. And I think that is true for some. Him, I'm on the fence. I think that might be the case. Definitely not Nicole Hannah-Jones. But some of them just do it for money. Come on, we're human. If somebody was telling you how great you were, wouldn't you keep going? They obviously let people who aren't them, who are listening and watching to your show, just listen, whether you're a liberal or not. If somebody is getting paid and getting fame for saying the things that they're saying, why would they stop doing it? Even if they believe it or not, even if they don't believe it, why wouldn't they do it? Right? They're going to keep doing it because they're getting a benefit from it as they knock in New York. But it's just, I don't know if he really believes. He can't really believe it because he says stuff like, in order to fix racism, we need racism, right? Nobody can actually believe that. Nobody's that crazy. At least with the 1619 project, it's well written, which is why I think it's worse. It's well written. It takes enough facts to make you think, but they leave out omissions, which is why I enjoy. So like the Chris Rufo of the world are trying to fight to get CRT banned. You got the Goldwater Institute trying to fight for transparency in school. My lane is for where it's already there. You got thousands of schools with 1619 project. Fine. Take this book, I write a chapter on every essay, and bring it into the school and say, this is what 1619 says. This is what Charles says. Critical thinking, look it up. Who's right? I guarantee you there are more facts in mine than there are in hers.
That is certainly true. If you could be given a divine wand, a magic wand from God, and make one change in black life, I'll tell you what I would. So it was to put myself on the spot and to have you react. If I had that magic wand for one thing, it would be that every black kid have a father at home. What would yours be?
Ooh, that's a good one. See, I wasn't thinking that because I'm thinking it's as existing, but I guess I do have a magic wand because that's really important. But even still, I think people still have American privilege. They have all the other privileges we have. So if I were to say a different one, I would just, set the bar a little lower. I would say have them all be, engaged. They're not engaged. They're not paying. They send their kids to school like it's daycare, and they say the school's going to raise my kid. So I don't have to do additional teaching. I don't have to even ask them what they learned. It's just the school's doing okay. So they don't know all this stuff that's happening. They hear what BLM says about police. So, and I know this is right because I have upper middle class friends who I say, when was the last time you experienced a specific racist event in your life? They say, I can't remember, right? They're successful. They have summer homes. They're doing great. Yet they parrot what the Kendys say because, if it's on the news and they're saying it, it must be true. So because they're not engaged. So even though they have never had to deal with these things, they believe the majority of the black community has. I ask people another one. What percentage of blacks live in poverty? I get somewhere between 30 on the low end to 70 at the high end. Blacks, whites, it doesn't matter. No one knows that the number is 20, right? So it has been going down up until the COVID thing. So my point is, blacks aren't, as a whole, poor, uneducated, or criminals. But the narrative is that we're in the criminal justice system. Nobody I know really is in the criminal justice system. They say, we're all uneducated. 35% of them have college degrees, and we're all poor, only 20%. What about the 80%? Only 2.5% commit violent crime. What about the 97%? We are the 97% is what we should be saying, but we're not engaged. So that would be the one I would go with.
It was a good answer. I had a good answer, and you had a good answer. Well, my friend, how do people hear your show?
Well, my radio show, I'm kind of busy. So the Charles Love Show is on AM 560, The Answer in Chicago. It airs at 11 a.m. Central on Sundays. My podcast, Cut the Bull, you can just stream it or you can download it on your app and listen to it or watch it on YouTube. We had Eric Metaxas. We're going to have Dennis Prager. We've had Tucker Carlson. We've got some really interesting episodes. The current one is Bruce Gilley defending colonialism. So that was an interesting conversation. And they can just find all the stuff that I do at thecharleslove.com.
Bless you, my friend. This was a wonderful time. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
The Dennis Prager Show.
It's very powerful, in fact. So a thought. It was a wonderful interview with this gentleman, Charles Love. Love that he dressed up for the interview because the interviews are now Skyped on video on my video feed. And I like that. I attribute great importance to clothing. Great importance. For those of you biblically inclined, you know what the first thing God did after Adam and Eve ate of the forbidden fruit? Made them clothing. Anyway, I think a lot about young people. It is our task to give them the best. Every generation should get the best of everything. The best math, the best science, the best music, the best art, the best literature. That's our task. The left has undermined the greatest gift that the previous generations can give to the young generation. The best. There is no best. There's only color of producer of the music, the art, the dance, the science. Isn't that amazing? I think boredom plays a role again. People are bored. Oh, what? Shakespeare again? Let's find something else. But then you've deprived kids of the best playwright who ever lived. Why would you do that? It's no favor to young people. That's our task. Every generation has the task of transmitting the best to the next generation. Why isn't that exciting? Why isn't that wonderful? How could that possibly be racist? It has nothing to do with race. Nothing. Nothing at all. The best is the best. The race of the producer doesn't matter. The eye color of the producer, of the greatest, doesn't matter. I don't get it. Why would you not want to give the next generation the best of everything? I'm Dennis Prager. See you tomorrow.